Chris Sewall here, baseball card collector, investor, dealer, in that order. Welcome everyone. Question and answer time. Thank you everyone for submitting questions. I got a lot, so I won't be able to get to them all, but I picked out some here to go into some depth. We'll start everyone sent by Mike, who wanted to get your thoughts on people who have card collections that are not shared publicly. As someone who has not actively collected for about 20 years now, I almost feel guilty not sharing my collection with others. With the digital world we live in today, there seems to be a lot of outside pressure to get everything graded or sell your collection or post your cards on social media for likes, when my collection just sits in a box under my bed, literally the same way I kept my cards in a shoebox under my bed as a kid 35 years ago. Even though I've built a very nice collection over the years, I think there's something to be said for collections that never see the light of day outside of being taken out a few times a year to reminisce. What are your thoughts? So for me, this is a very easy one. Like, you owe absolutely nothing to anybody regarding how you want to collect and how you want to hobby. If you want to keep your cards in a shoebox under the bed and only look at them once a year, you are 100% free to do that, and you should feel absolutely no guilt whatsoever in terms of that's the way you participate in the hobby. That's completely your right, and yeah, there's nothing really more to it than that. I've said a number of times that I think that the majority of collectors are more like you. Actually, they're more private. They're not really interested in sort of showcasing their cards or showing off their cards, and they just sort of want to collect quietly their cards. And that's certainly how I was, and in my experience, that's how the majority of collectors are. The smaller percentage are people who are very loud and want to post all over social media, and I'm not saying that in a negative way at all. I think it's an important piece of the hobby too. They post it all over social media. They want to talk about it. They want to showcase their cards to their friends and to their communities, and that sort of stuff is what we see. So the small percentage of people who do that, that's what we see, whereas the larger percentage of people who are very private, we don't see that. So it gets distorted in terms of what the hobby looks like. It's actually, it looks like it's very loud and everyone's showing off, but the truth, in my opinion, is it's actually the opposite. Most people are reserved, and it's just the loud minority that gets pushed front and center, and is what we end up seeing. Next one comes from Scott, who wrote, "Would love your take on whether or not we have a growing issue with pop counts. The term pop count no longer feels apples to apples due to modern manufactured scarcity versus true scarcity. Example, a 65 mantle autograph PSA 7 is a pop 2, whereas a 2023 Topps Lamine Yamal orange foil board out of 25 PSA 8 is also a pop 2. Well, I get that in the literal sense. There are only 25 of the orange foil Lamine cards in existence with a PSA 8 pop 2. There are dozens of parallels of that card spread across several sets, each with their own varying print runs. There are just so many versions of the card, while the mantle is truly just a single version. What are your thoughts? Any advice for newer collectors as they determine the weight of a given card?" So yeah, you've already hit on a couple of the key points in your question. Knowing the pop count of a specific card in a specific grade really doesn't actually tell you. I mean, you need to know that it's the start of but it's really just the start. You need quite a bit more information. You definitely need to know how many are higher. Like in your mantle example, it's a PSA 7 autograph pop 2 65 tops. Well, are there 500 higher in which case the 7 is not that special, or is there only 2 higher, in which case the 7 is super special, one of the nicest in existence? If you said it's a pop 2 and there are 15 higher, okay, now I know that there's it's one of the 17 nicest copies in existence. That's a lot more useful information than there just randomly happens to be two copies in a 7. So whenever I list something on eBay and I include pop counts, or when I talk about it on the YouTube channel, I always say this card's a pop this with this higher, because I think the higher is just as important as the pop count. And your second point's a really good one, and something I don't think is talked about enough. What'd you call it? You called it how many versions of the card? I think of it in terms of how many replacement cards there are out there. Let's take like a Hall of Fame rookie. We'll say Ricky Henderson, 1980 Topps Ricky Henderson rookie. If you're a collector and you want a Ricky Henderson rookie, you only got one card to go for. He's only got one rookie. That's it. There's no other card you could replace it with as a collector and be just as satisfied, because any other card you get from Henderson, it won't be his rookie. So there will be a loss in satisfaction. Whereas with the Lamine Yamal 2023 Topps orange foil board out of 25, there may be specific collectors who are looking for that specific card for some reason, but the majority of Lamine Yamal collectors who want a cool card for their collection, they could go for that one, or they could go for any other. There's 50 or hundreds of other cards that are just as comparable in terms of quality of card and scarcity and serial number and PSA grading and all that. So there's a lot of other cards they could replace it in their collection with and be just as satisfied. So yeah, while the Lamine Yamal is obviously much rarer than the Ricky Henderson, you still have to factor in the replacement aspect in terms of into the equation. Next one comes from David Bruno, who I think I've done 10 deals with through the mail here. 2 questions. First, what has been your overall experience when it comes to us viewers sending you collections or lots? Has it been mostly positive and a very few hiccups, or have there been any viewers who have been a bit difficult? I personally feel you're very honest and fair with assessments, but we've had a couple hiccups before, although we worked it out. Second question, what is your honest opinion about the current state of the market when it comes to these insane pricing trends for grails and prospects? Do you see this as another step into a massive Jenga board game crash or Monopoly where the money keeps flowing endlessly as it seems? So to answer your first question, it's just been an absolute unexpected treasure about the channel that it's created a lot of leads, and in particular, a lot of people, just mail me their collections, and then I make an offer on it once I receive it, and they can either accept or pass. And if they pass, I just ship it back. And it was actually a viewer who recommended this to me. They were like, "Hey, can I just ship you my cards, and you should just pay me whatever you think is fair?" And I remember when this first happened, my thoughts were like, "Okay, if I made this like some sort of business model, there's like all sorts of potential problems. Like people could claim they're shipping me cards that they didn't, or people could ship me a whole bunch of worthless cards, and then I have to explain, they're not worth anything, and I have to ship them back, and there's all these costs associated, or people could get offended with my offers, saying I'm way too low, or I'm trying to rip them off, or you can design all sorts of potential problems that would potentially arise from this, but it really just has not been that. I say 90 to 95% of people accept my offers. It's more than that. It's very, very few people who pass, and even when they do pass, it's not a big deal. Okay, they pass, I just ship it back. We're both out. $20 for shipping, no big deal. So it's truly been like overwhelmingly positive. Yeah, there's like small hiccups here and there. You mentioned we had a couple of hiccups. I actually don't remember, dude. A couple of times people, feel I'm offering a little too low, and we go back and forth, and it just always sort of works itself out. I've been doing it for about 4 years now, and I've received over 200 collections through the mail at this point, and I can think of two that went poorly. Maybe I'll share the details at some point on the channel, but in both cases, in my viewpoint, the person was being wildly unreasonable. I'm sure if you ask them, they'd say I was being unreasonable. But yeah, only 2 out of over 200 have been what I would call a notable negative. And as for your second question, like what's the state of the market, and do these record-breaking sales impact things? I've been in the hobby 35 years. I've seen record-breaking sales many, many, many times. People always, they're very interesting, and I talk about them too. They're interesting, and they're worthy of talking about. But people way overreact to what they mean. It's just an isolated. These are just isolated. This is just an isolated moment. Things are going really well right now. I promise you, in the near future, there'll be a downslide, and then in the near future, there'll be another upswing. These are just the everyday ebbs and flows of the hobby. If you were to zoom out, this would have no impact. Could there be some like small ripple effects in terms of what high-end Michael Jordan and high-end Kobe Bryant sell for? Yeah. And could there be some other ripple effects, other large sales happen? Sure. But to the everyday collector, the everyday dealer, it's just a cool news story and nothing really more. I don't know if the hobby's gonna continue to rise, or if it's about to turn and go down. And to be honest, I don't really care. Either way, I'm in it for the long term, and I promise you that 20 years from now, things will be fine. Next one comes from Dave, who wrote, I recently made an eBay purchase of this graded card. Just wondering how legit is this seller's business as far as grading. I didn't realize it wasn't a PSA until I got it. Couldn't find much help online as far as the name AIC grading. I understand everyone had to have started their business at one time or another. It just makes me wonder if this card truly is a Gem 10, or is he just stocking up on these cards and selling them as Gem 10s? Basically, is this a legit business or not? What are your thoughts on this? So in terms of is this a legit business? I really don't know. I've never heard of AIC. I don't know who owns this or who is the person who graded this card. Remember, grading is just somebody's opinion. So whoever's opinion this is that it's a 10, I don't know. In the hobby's perspective, this is not a credible grading company, AIC at the moment. They may be one day, but at this point, they definitely are not. Now, there's a lot of sort of upstart grading companies like this, people in their garage grading cards, and I'm sure some of them are very credible, and they have good intentions, and they're trying to do the right thing, and they're just trying to provide maybe a cheaper option for collectors to get their stuff graded. Or I don't know what they're trying to do, but I'm sure there are some with good intentions. I don't know if this one is. I would need to see sort of the eBay listing, and I couldn't find it. The eBay listing, if they say PSA in the heading or anything like that, then they're definitely not credible. They're trying to take advantage of newer collectors. I would also say that the label looks suspiciously like PSA with the red border. So in that sense, my gut would tell me that this is a company that's not legit, and they're trying to sort of trick people into thinking that they're buying a PSA card when they're not. I don't know that to be true, but that would sort of be, my gut feeling on it. Next one comes from Least Slutty. Love the name there. What are your thoughts on dual player cards? I see you showing virtually worthless cards from the 70s featuring 2 players on one card, and yet this has been considered totally cool and modern. Your opinion? You seem to think that the modern dual player cards were overvalued comp to the 70s baseball, but is that your official opinion? So the dual player cards or triple or quad player cards, I think they're awesome in all the eras. It's one I think they're really undervalued in a lot of times. With in the vintage, you know, the league leaders, I love it when there's like a league leader card with 3 Hall of Famers on it or 4 all-time greats or whatever. In modern, it's cool too. That, you know, rookie cards with Ohtani and Soto on the same card, or you know, Ohtani and Judge, or, you know, teammates or dual autos of teammates. I think this stuff's really creative. In the early 2000s, they did a lot of great ones. I just was bidding on it, but I didn't win. A dual auto of Nolan Ryan and Pedro Martinez is from 2001. Just really cool stuff. I should give a caveat. I think it's cool when the players are related somehow to each other, like they're all teammates or they're all pitchers in this era, or something like that. I don't like when it's just sort of random, which is maybe what you're mentioning in terms of me, saying they're overvalued or complaining about them. Like sometimes you'll see a card and it's like, you know, Zion Williamson and Steph Curry, and you're like, these are just 2 basketball players. How are they, you know, how are they connected? I like when there's like a specific connection, like these were all the 40-40 players, or these were the home run leaders in last season, or these sort of things. So, or these were teammates, or these guys won the World Series as teammates together. That's when I think the dual, triple, quad, even up to 8 sometimes, cards are very cool. Next question comes from David, who wrote, I have 2 questions for you. You often come across high-grade sets or even partial sets. So my first question is, do you collect or collate any sets for your own personal collection? And secondly, what would you recommend is the best way to sell vintage baseball sets, say from the late 50s through the late 70s, without going through one of the big auction houses? So I've actually never been a set collector, even back when I was like a true collector. Just putting sets together was never my thing. No, I don't collect or you know, collate sets for my personal collection in any way. Now, as a dealer, a lot of times it makes sense to do that. Like I recently bought a collection that had 2000 1968 cards in it, and yeah, it made more sense to collate it and make sort of 3 starter sets out of it, for selling purposes. But yeah, so I do a lot of it for selling purposes, but no, not for personal collection reasons. For your second question, what's the best way to sell vintage sets without using an auction house? That I would need a lot more information before I could sort of answer that correctly. And you know, just to give you some general things, like in general, if a set is lower grade, you probably just want to sell it as a set on eBay, or I don't know what other outlets you have. If you don't want to use an auction house, eBay would be one, or someone like me. But if it was a higher grade set, you would probably do better to split it up, pull out some of the higher end cards to grade. If it's a very mixed condition set, you may want to split it into like 2 partial sets. Like here's a low grade partial set and a mid grade partial set. You'll probably do better that way. And yeah, I would sort of need a lot more information before I could sort of answer that fully. Next question comes from Pete's Junk Treasure. Would you prefer in your collection to have a card that is subpar condition but perfectly centered, or Gem Mint 10 but dramatically off centered? Same question, but what about for selling success? So it's really hard for me to answer that without knowing the specific card and the specs. But in general, I actually don't value centering as much as most collectors. I value the surface and the sort of presentation of the card the most. Like I want a really sharp image, and I want no surface imperfections wherever possible. And I would, you know, after that, I sort of value corners, edges, and centering similarly. So I would always take the card that's a little bit off centered but has really perfect surface versus the flip where it's perfectly centered but has a slight surface issue. But I don't think I'm sort of I think the majority of collectors prefer centering. And to answer your second question, yeah, for selling purposes, if it was a card I was looking to sell, I'd prefer to have the centered one, because in general, cards that are centered better sell more. Baseball collector asks, do you like movies about gladiators? I mean, not really. There's some okay ones like the movie Gladiator, but for the most part, that's not really my genre of choice. But it reminds me of a joke. A gladiator walks into a bar and he goes up to the bartender and he says, "Hey, bartender, I'm being chased by a witch. She's trying to kill me. Is there anything we can do about that?" And the bartender says, "Oh, you mean the witch that's out back? Yeah, we just had our lion go eat her. The lion attacked her and ate her, so you don't have to worry about the witch anymore." And the gladiator said, "Ugh, I'm Gladiator, and don't call me Shirley." But that's it for now. Thank you everyone for watching, and thank you everyone for submitting questions. I have a lot of great questions I didn't get to, so they're still in the queue for potentially next time. I think I'm going to be doing Q&A videos a little more regularly, so if you have a question you'd like featured, you can send me an email. Email will be the best way to do it. Put Q&A in the heading, and yeah, it'll go into the queue for Q&A videos. But yeah, appreciate it as always, and see you all again next time. Thanks everyone.